Shall we start reading? So, get the page, okay? The soul and its liberation. And we are on, if you are on CWSA, page 441, 443, sorry. And what we'll do, we will read the summary of the previous page so that we get a continuity. And then we'll read the para that we have to read today. So, what he said in the previous para is like this. The first movement of separation between the watcher and watched. The watcher is the consciousness in you, or you can also say it's the soul in you, because soul and consciousness are in many philosophies same, but in some they say there's a difference. But this is a minor thing because difference and sameness also goes on becoming less and less clear when you go up, because unity is being achieved. So the first movement of separation between watcher and watched. And what is the watched? Prakriti, your body, mind, life. Your consciousness comes out and you are watching. Now, Sridhar is saying the first movement of separation between watcher and watched, even in the integral yoga, actually is necessary, actually helps the ascetic withdrawal, because then you lose your attachment to all the things. Attachment, ego and desire, all these things vanish when you separate yourself from your body, mind, life. That's it. Although later there's a divergence between the two systems. The system he's talking about is the traditional system where they separate themselves from body, mind, life, and that is the end of the journey for them. But in the integral yoga, the first movement is separation. The second movement is coming back into the body, mind, life, but this time becoming master of the senses and the body, mind, life. You are not a slave to body, mind, life in the integral yoga. It takes a long time, but that is the ideal. In the integral yoga, this separation is only a preliminary step. The second step in the integral yoga is a repossession of the lower nature, that's your body, mind, life, but this time with mastery and lordship, not a helpless and abject subjection to the ignorance of the lower nature. In the usual yogas, the separation is sufficient in itself and liberation of soul is considered enough. You just separate yourself and disappear into the infinite from where you came. The liberation of nature is not even attempted. Okay? They are very, very happy with less liberation. But in the integral yoga, you have to come back. Now, what he is saying, this separation, okay, what does it do when you separate yourself? First of all, it breaks the ego. There is no more ego. In other words, you become cosmic. Rejects the habits of the lower nature, which are in the grip of matter and the physical senses. That also goes away. Therefore, attachments disappear and desire and all these things disappear. Attachment, ego, desire, they disappear. In the beginning, temporarily perhaps, because you come back into your body, mind, life, but ultimately, with repeated experiences of this withdrawal, separation, you achieve mastery. Of course, it's a long time, but doesn't matter, that's the ideal. We see external objects. What happens when you separate yourself? He's continuing. We see external objects as only names and forms without substantial reality. 90% of the time you see the physical world as unreal. Okay, so, and that unreality also has got grades. Okay, sometimes you see it as like a cinema, half real, half unreal. And sometimes absolutely an illusion, like a mirage in a desert. We do not see nor know the subjective states of others, except by analogy with our own internal state. Normally you don't, okay? But even after liberation and destruction of ego and living in the spirit's infinity, we continue to see external objects as mere name and form, nama rupa. Okay? Everything becomes unreal. But now, when you become master, the false objective reality which we attributed to these names and forms disappears, and we experience them as empty shells. So, only transient forms. Compared to the utter reality of the silent self, the world becomes an unreal illusion in the traditional as well as the integral yoga in the beginning. We then reject these forms as worthless and we are satisfied with the blissful, impersonal, featureless infinity, which is a spiritual existence, and all manifestation seems valueless and fit only for rejection. There is no interest in enjoyment, and this goes as far as the inability to take pleasure even in God's delight. That's what he's saying. Okay? There is no need. You are concentrating only on the peace and the liberation. Absolute calm, peace, infinite sense of ease and comfort. Comfort not in a negative sense. Okay? As far as there is no interest in enjoyment, and this goes as far as the inability to take pleasure in God's delight. Rather, it is felt as strange that immaculate God should have debased himself in the manifestation of the lower nature. Why at all did God come down here? That becomes a problem in the traditional paths and in the beginning when you separate yourself from your body. Even if the delight is experienced, it is felt to be very far off, preventing active participation in it. We feel strongly attracted to the exclusive reality which does not allow easy living in the lower nature. You don't want to come down. That's the usual experience of everybody. Okay, you don't want to come down, but sometimes the divine tells you you have to come down. But you have to come down because you have work to do in the physical world. Okay, I'll give you two examples of this before we go on to the next para. Ramakrishna's case. Okay, he used to always, when he used to shoot up into the infinite nirvikalpa samadhi, he used to go up. He used to lose his consciousness in the physical, and he used to stand up. His body used to go into all sorts of mudras, and there's a famous picture of him standing up and with his hands up. Okay, and he's closed his eyes. He's in the higher level of consciousness. He doesn't want to come down. When you are enjoying such a bliss, and why do you want to come down and limit yourself? So, but sometimes the divine tells you to come down. So he had to actually devise a method which I have told you. He used to leave a small desire down in the ground. Okay, and this is also sometimes later on. There is a very interesting which I have got from other sources, but I don't remember reading it, because his wife used to wonder why he is going on asking every day, what is there for lunch today? Okay, he used to go on asking. She used to feel, what is this? He is supposed to be almost an avatar and is going on worrying about food. The, the solution to the problem was that he is tying himself down into the physical world through all the apparent desire. So that's one. Then the other thing also I'll tell you, when mother experienced the supramental boat, okay, she was there and it's a beautiful piece. You can read that again and again and you will enjoy it so much. Mother went with her normal consciousness, she says, not the spiritual consciousness. She went with her waking normal consciousness into the supramental world. And there she was experiencing and she was in charge, she says. And she's, if you type on the internet, if you want to see this, all you have to do is to type the mother's supramental boat. I think you will get the text. Okay. It's about 4 or 5 pages. And she says that suddenly she felt a sort of pulling down, as though something is calling her down into the physical world. But she did not want to come down. She did not want to come down. But she was forced to come down. Okay. And when she came down, she saw that the clock is striking 3 o'clock. So that sound of the clock actually is pulling you down. Okay, the physical thing is pulling you down. There is another very interesting prayers and meditations. Okay, when she was in Pondicherry after 1914, she is writing this. I can't give you the exact date, but you can check. After 1914, when she was here for about 3-4 months or maybe even 6 months, she was here. And in one of her meditations, she is writing, I have experienced the bliss of the spiritual planes. I'm using my own words. But why have you brought me down into the physical world again? After having given me the experience of this wonderful peace and calm, you are really putting me down into this. What is this you are doing to me? Maybe it is because I have work to do here in the physical world. She replies that also. So that is why sometimes the great of soul are asked to come down and work in the physical world. Okay. So, but there is a strong will in you when you are in the higher to reject the lower and not come down. That's the last sentence in the summary that I just now read. We feel strongly attracted to the exclusive spiritual reality, which does not allow easy living in the lower nature. So, this is the summary of what he said in the previous para. Now we read the para that we have to read today. Okay, I'll read the whole para and then we'll come back to it. But if either in the course of our yoga or as a result of a free return of our realized self upon the world and a free repossession of its prakriti by the Purusha in us, we become conscious not only of the bodies and outward self-expression of others, but intimately of their inner being, their minds, their souls, and that in them of which their own surface minds are not aware. Okay? They don't know themselves, but if you are in the spiritual plane of consciousness, you can see their inner being and you know what they are thinking, what they are. Then we see the real being in them also, and we see them as selves of ourselves and not as mere names and forms. They become to us realities of the eternal, that which seem to be empty shell and empty forms now put on a reality. They become to us realities of the eternal. The stone, the insects, the trees, they are not empty forms. They become expressions of the reality. Behind the form, there is a reality which you see. Our minds are no longer subject to the delusion of trivial unworthiness. And earlier, when you are there, you are thinking that the world is so useless, not worthy at all. Why has God created this? But on the contrary, now you see a worth. There's a worth in what you are seeing in the physical world. There's a purpose. Our minds are no longer subject to the delusion of trivial unworthiness or the illusion of unreality. The material life loses indeed for us its old absorbing value because ego, desire and attachment have disappeared. So the material life loses indeed for us its old absorbing value, but finds the greater value which it has for the divine Purusha, regarded no longer as the sole term of our becoming, but as merely having a subordinate value in relation to the higher terms of mind and spirit. It increases by that diminution instead of losing in value. Okay, your interest in the physical world increases, the saying, instead of losing in value. When you, if you are an integral yogi, we see that our material being, life, nature are only one voice of the Purusha in relation to its Prakriti, and that their true purpose and importance can only be appreciated when they are seen not as a thing in itself, but as dependent on higher poises by which they are supported. From those superior relations, they derive their meaning, and therefore, by conscious union with them, they can fulfill all their valid tendencies and aims. Life then becomes justified to us and no longer stultified by the possession of liberated self-knowledge. I think, yeah, because I remember the word stultified. I think.
Yeah, we had read this.
Yeah, we have read it because Jasmine asked what does stultify mean. Okay, and I had said also that cause to lose enthusiasm and initiative because of a tendency. Okay, that's what he's saying. So, since we have already done it, okay, there are some very interesting phrases there. So, I'll quickly go through each sentence and you tell me whether it's clear. Okay, and if you need discussion, I'll point out a few things. But if either in the course of our, yes, tell me something.
I think Yasmin read it and we had to do the paragraph.
That's right. So that's what I'm doing now. Correct. You are right. That word certify reminded me that Yasmin had read it. Okay. But if I'm beginning from the beginning of the para, but if either in the course of our yoga or as a result of a free return of our realized self upon the world, and a free repossession of its Prakriti by the Purusha in us, we become conscious not only of the bodies and outward self-expression of others, but intimately of their inner being, their minds, their souls, and that in them of which their own surface minds are not aware. Then we see the real being in them also, and we see them as selves of ourselves and not as mere names and forms. This is exactly what is meant by mother will do the sadhana in you. You have to only surrender yourself to her. You have to give, as Ramakrishna's image was, there was an actor in the theatre in Calcutta. In those days, there was that Star Theatre, and they used to have all sorts of dramas, and one of them was Girish Ghosh. Okay, and Girish Ghosh. We all in India, we have a common idea that if you are in the cinema trade or in the show business, then you are fallen in consciousness, and it's a very only low type of immoral people go there. That was the idea, and there is an element of truth in that also. But Girish Ghosh was absolutely in love with Ramakrishna, but he was a sinner. Okay, he used to do everything that you should not do in the world. Okay, drinking, womanizing, everything he used to do. But he loved Ramakrishna, and he used to tell me, "You can do nothing with me. I am a lost soul." He used to say. So Ramakrishna told him, "Give me your power of attorney." Okay, when you give your work, your case to an attorney, you have to sign a paper saying, whatever you do, I will agree with it. Okay, so this is that. In other words, surrender yourself to me and I will do everything for you. If you don't surrender yourself and you constantly go on denying what the mother is doing in you, how will she do work in you? You have to admit, you have to agree. That's surrender. So this is what surrender is to say. You surrender to her and she will do the work. How will she do the work in you? Precisely because she is in a consciousness where she can enter into your nature. She can enter into your mind, she can enter into your vital, and she can enter into your very body. Then she will see what are the difficulties of your nature. That's what he's saying here in the first sentence. And then she will, now your problem becomes her problem. And she has the power to do something about it. So that is how what is meant was, surrender yourself to the mother and she will do the sadhana in you. And that is true even today. If you give yourself to the divine, whatever your, depends on to whom you are surrendering, they will do the work for you because you identify yourself with them. That is what he is saying here. And they are very interesting because you come to know their inner being, their minds, their souls, and that in them which they are in their own surface mind, they are not aware. So that's an interesting part. Okay. I remember a very interesting case which one of my friends only told me. She was going, I think I've told you once. We were going in the 1950s, mother used to give blessings very often in the meditation hall. That staircase which is there right in front, there is a huge picture of mother. She used to sit there, okay, facing the east. And we used to go from the other side and then go, and she used to give us either flowers, normally flowers, or sometimes messages and all. So one day she was giving red roses to everybody, and one girl who was standing about 5 or 6 behind in the queue thought that mother won't give me any rose today. I don't think she'll give me a red rose. But as soon as she came in front of mother, mother told her in French, okay, she said, "Aye, that's what you think? Here you are." And she gave her a red rose. So they are able to see your thoughts, they are able to see your, not only see, but enter into you and become one with you because they have the power of identity. And then it becomes their own. Mother has the power to change herself, and she does that. Now, when she is changing herself, actually she is changing you because she has identified herself with you. Okay, that's what Sandhya is saying here. Look very carefully at the sentence. When we possess it, we possess what? The larger integral knowledge and freedom. We see why. Sorry. Sorry, I have to read the other one. The free return of our realized self upon the world and a free repossession. Now when you come back with a mastery over Prakriti by the Purusha, we become conscious not only of the bodies and the outward self-expression of others, but intimately of their inner being, their minds, their souls, and that in them of which their own surface minds are not aware. Then we see the real being in them also, and we see them as selves of ourselves and not as mere names and forms. And this mother used to do this work at night. Okay, she used to just rest on the couch, but her being is working. She goes to each. In those days, there were very few sadhaks, so she used to go to each sadhak in the subtle world and look into their case and do what was necessary. Okay, so one day she asked the sadhak, "Where were you last night? You were not sleeping in your bed. Where were you?" So conscious that she knows what each one is doing. And she knew that because she was going into each sadhak and doing the sadhana for them. So, but this is also true even today, because at that time, yes, the personal divine is doing because she is manifest in the physical world. But does that make it? The principle still acts even today. If you surrender yourself to the divine, and that's not an easy thing to do, okay? We always have reservations. But if you can surrender yourself totally to the divine, okay, to mother or Sranga or to whoever, what is your conception of the divine, they will send automatically, okay, the law of connection with their nature will pour into you by the connection. That is, this is there even in the physical world. Na? If you make a hole in a bucket, the water will flow out. So if you connect yourself with them, okay, they will send whatever is there in their nature, they'll send it into you. So this principle is still valid. Although mother is not there and Sranga is not there physically, the subtle world still has this law. Okay? It's an interesting thing. So surrender is the most powerful method. I read the next sentence.
Last time,
Huh.
you gave us the example of Gautam Chawla for the first sentence.
Exactly. That's it. She started working in him of that which he was not conscious. Exactly. He was in fact resenting. So that's exactly what that he did not know why mother is doing that, but she is actually working in him. Okay. Exactly. That's exactly what I was saying just now. Correct. You are absolutely right. He himself is resenting why mother is doing this to me. I did not do this. But she only took the opportunity. Okay. And she started saying that. He told her, "Mother, what you are accusing me of, I did not do." But she is working on something deeper. She has only taken the opportunity, opened the door, and she is working something in him. It's a very interesting case, yeah. Okay, I read the next one. They become to us, the outer forms. Okay? I'm reading the next sentence. They become to us realities of the eternal. They are not empty forms anymore. Our minds are no longer subject to the delusion of trivial unworthiness, which you have the first experience, you find that the physical world is absolutely unimportant. This can happen, this experience can happen. It's interesting. When you have this first experience of detachment, it can take place in 1 or 2 seconds. It can take place for a couple of hours. And it can take place for 6 months, 7 months also in the beginning. But afterwards, it can become permanent. When you go on repeating, and your lower being is sufficiently pure, it becomes permanent. What becomes permanent? Your station in the higher level of consciousness. It becomes permanent. I know of 3 cases, okay? Personally, they spoke to me about it themselves. One case was a boy who, for very few 4 or 5 seconds, he went out of his body. And when you are out of your body, the density of your body, mind, life does not apply to you anymore. So you see the light, you see the purpose of existence, you see everything. It changed his life completely, he told me. Okay? But that is a boy who could not stay here. He had to go away because maybe this was not his path. Then another interesting case was someone who was in the nursing home, okay, and she was not feeling very well. But When I went one day to see her, she's telling me, suddenly the whole world has become so unimportant, and all those small things which I was worrying about have absolutely no importance at all. And I am absolutely at peace and calm. There is nothing that is bothering me. Then I asked her, are you still in this consciousness? So the person told me, no. I said, how long did it last? She told me about 2-3 hours. Okay. And then one of the students also in recent times, okay, she told me that her special condition lasted for 1 day. And she lost it when her parents scolded her for something very trivial, but she lost it because it disturbs the being. When you are scolded and you are still not perfectly, you have not gained samatha, there's a disturbance in the being. Okay? The calm, peace, waters are no more, they are troubled because you throw a stone into it. Then it starts becoming disturbed and you lose that consciousness. This is what that child told me. Okay. And she used to wonder what it was all about, and that's why she asked me. Okay, that's one thing. And I know of another person who was very intimately friendly with me. It lasted for him for 6 months. So this can happen. But ultimately, it will become stationed in that consciousness. So this is what Swami is saying. Okay, so I go back to the sentences. So that unworthiness, okay, afterwards disappears when you come down and possess and become master of your body, mind, life. This unworthiness of the physical world disappears because you are seeing the true value of all the forms. Behind the apparent form, which is born and which dies in the physical world, transient forms, you see the reality behind that form. So therefore it is no more worthless. There is a worth in the physical world. Okay. So, the material life loses indeed for us its old absorbing value. We read that. Then, and then Srivali is saying, when you see the world as useless in the beginning, when the separation is there, afterwards when you repossess the physical world, the value of the physical world is not as much as you thought it earlier, but now by that diminution, actually Srivali is saying the value of the physical world increases because you're seeing the reality there. It seems to be a contradiction, but that's it. You first separate yourself from your body, mind, life. You see the physical world as worthless, an illusion, worth rejecting. But now, instead of remaining in that consciousness in the integral yoga, you come down and become master of your body, mind, life. It doesn't happen immediately. It will take a long time. But when you do that, now the physical world is not unreal for you. And when it is not unreal, you see the reality behind the forms and it takes on a greater value than earlier. Okay, that's what he's saying. So, and then you also understand why this experience of rejection came. Okay? And he's saying, we see that our material being, life, nature, are only one poise of the Purusha in relation to its Prakriti. Okay? The soul and your body, mind, life. Prakriti is your body, mind, life, and the soul is your Purusha. And that their true purpose and importance can only be appreciated when they are seen not as a thing in itself, but as dependent on higher poises by which they are supported. We'll go into a little detail on this. In the beginning, you see the physical world as unreal because you are seeing only the forms. Then later on, when you see the reality behind the form, you see that the form is not something by itself. It is actually being supported by the higher realities. So, as they say, everything in the physical world, its archetype is in heaven. Okay, there is a connection between the lower and the higher. The higher is the blueprint, and the lower is the manifestation. So, you see the blueprint, and then you give it the right value, because the blueprints are all divine in the divine level of consciousness. Everything that is there in the physical world, its originating idea, same the concept, the real idea, is there in the supermind. And now you see the connection. Therefore, you can't reject the forms. That's what he's saying. Okay? We see that our material being, life, nature are only one poise of the Purusha in relation to the Prakriti, and that their true purpose and importance can only be appreciated when they are seen not as a thing in itself, not only as empty forms, but as dependent upon higher poises by which they are supported. From those superior relations, they derive their meaning, and therefore, by conscious union with them, they can fulfill all their valid tendencies and aims. Life then becomes justified to us and no longer stultified by the possession of liberated self-knowledge. So, level number 1, you go to the spiritual planes of consciousness and you normally reject the physical world. But instead of doing that, remain calm and quiet, and when you come back into the physical world, after a lot of effort, okay? Same is saying in the beginning of the para, he's saying either effort or, but if either in the course of our yoga or as a result of a free return, okay? Even in the course of the yoga, it can happen. That means you, Sriyamdev, you remember, he was not jumping to conclusions and saying that the physical world is unreal when he had the experience of the silent mind in Baroda. But he waited patiently. So you can have that experience even partially, and finally you will have it fully. That's what he's saying in the 8:24. We have got 10 minutes. So I'll do one thing. I will read out the summary of this, what he's saying, so that we get the gist of what he's saying. Then we'll go on to the next one. We'll read the next para. Okay. Just 1 second. During the course of yoga, I'm reading the summary of what we have just now read. During the course of yoga or after the return to lower nature. That means even during the course of yoga, partial. Or return to lower nature, full. Okay, fully. Not temporal, but full. Nature having realized the self, we repossess our lower nature of body, mind, life, body, life, mind, with mastery instead of slavery. We begin to see the external forms not as mere empty, unsubstantial shadows, but true objects containing the secret divine presence within them. This is because we now see not only external physical forms, but the inner reality present in all objects, the divine presence we see. We also become capable of seeing and knowing the inner beings of others, including their thoughts, their emotions, and even the soul. We see things in others that their own surface nature is not aware of. Just as Ramakrishna saw in Vivekananda a great soul of which Vivekananda himself knew nothing about at that time. In fact, he used to always quarrel with Ramakrishna. Why are you going on showering so much love on me? I don't love you as much. I don't. He used to quarrel with him actually. So, we also see others in ourselves, which is a cosmic consciousness, comprehending consciousness. We also see others as ourselves. Not only we see ourselves in others, but even as ourselves, which is the comprehending consciousness and the apprehending consciousness. Everything now gets transmuted into realities of the eternal. They are not shadows anymore. There is no shadow, no illusion. Nothing is trivial nor unworthy as previously experienced. Nothing qualifies for contemptuous rejection. Nothing qualifies for that. Everything has got value, as in the ascetic path. The materialistic life, which was earlier absorbing and attractive, and which was enjoyed fully with vital interest and attention, is now replaced and enjoyed with a genuine interest in the inner life, because all forms are now seen as divine in essence. This new enjoyment is desireless, motiveless, peaceful, absolutely calm, without a single disturbing vibration. The diminution of the surface interest is followed by a deeper increase of soul interest in things. The surface interests are replaced by soul interests. Interesting way of putting it. We now understand at the lowest level of the body-mind life, our nature, Prakriti, is a unique poise in relation to the soul. And this relation stands explained at a deeper level. Our higher poise sees the truth of Purusha and Prakriti and understands that all relative forms get their value only when the higher levels are seen and understood. Life then becomes meaningful and is no longer full of falsehood, limitation, perversion, and evil. It becomes meaningful. That's what Shraddha is saying in the Bible. Okay? So, what's the time? 8:28. So we have still got 6 minutes or so. So 6-7 minutes. So we'll read the next one. This larger integral knowledge. Okay?
Okay, I'm reading it.
Yes, go ahead.
Here,
Yes.
this larger integral knowledge and freedom liberates in the end and fulfills our whole existence. When we possess it, we see why our existence moves between these three terms of God, ourselves, and the world. We no longer see them or any of them in opposition to each other, incompatible, nor do we, on the other hand, regard them as terms of our ignorance, which all disappear at last into a pure impersonal unity. We perceive their necessity as terms rather of our self fulfillment, which preserve their value after liberation, or rather find then only their real value. We are no longer the experience of our existence as exclusive of the other existence, which make up by our relations with them our experience of the world. In this new consciousness, they are all contained in ourselves and we in them. They and we are no longer so many mutually exclusive egos, each seeking its own independent fulfillment or self transcendence and ultimately aiming at nothing else. They are all the eternal and the self in each secretly. They are all the eternal and the self in each secretly embraces all in itself and seeks in various ways to make that higher truth of its unity apparent and effective in its terrestrial being. Not mutual exclusiveness, but mutual inclusiveness is the divine truth of our individual. Love the higher law and not an independent self fulfillment.
Yeah. Okay. So quickly we'll read the summary of what he's saying and next time we can go into detail. Okay. So what he's saying here, he's saying this. He's saying this new poise of the being, which you are in the body-mind life, but without being subject to the body-mind life, you are master of the body-mind. This new poise of the being, which while living in the own level of body, life, mind, yet enjoys the nature of the higher level. That was the condition of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And to a certain extent also other yogis, is a state of integral knowledge, self-existent bliss, total freedom. We now see the basic stands of the divine, God, nature, man, or in other words, transcendent, cosmic, individual. And these three are experienced simultaneously, not sequentially or separately, and are in complete harmony. In the beginning, they are not in harmony, but now they are perfectly harmonious, transcendent, cosmic, and individual. In the rising from ignorance, in the spiritual planes, the second level, these three states are incompatible with each other, usually. But when you are master of your body, mind, life, they are compatible. They are contrary to one another. We now understand the necessity of the lower planes and their justification. Even if they are steeped in falsehood, evil, and suffering, we understand why it is necessary. They are recognized as necessary to our more complete fulfillment in contrast to the exclusive liberation from the lower nature. Now, there is no sense of separation from others. There is a comprehending and apprehending consciousness that is, I am in all and all are in me. That's it. The ego's complete disappearance allows the soul to see its own fulfillment as an integral part of the self-fulfillment of all others. That's why Sri Aurobindo was interested also in the liberating everybody else. There is no exclusivity, but only an inclusivity. You include everyone in your own success. Our fulfillment of truth and love is not individually independent, but part of the integral wholeness. That is why Sri Aurobindo was all the time insisting on collectivity, and that's what they are doing by creating the ashram and Auroville. Okay. Collective yoga. A collective yoga is, I think, unique. Earlier also there used to be ashrams, but it used to be individual effort. But now the whole social base has to rise simultaneously. So although we see a lot of quarrels among ourselves and all, the attempt has been started at a total, a collective, okay? A collective which will have harmony within itself. Okay, that's the interesting part. So we can stop here today, and if you want, we will redo that next time. Okay, so just 1 second. So next time we can go to each sentence and see what he's saying. This larger integral knowledge. Okay, so we, okay.
Merci beaucoup.
Have a nice day, everybody.
Thank you.